Hello and welcome back to Day 4 of BPM Live 2017. It's the final day of what has been a fantastic series of interactive online events throughout this week, looking at the technologies and ideas that are at the cutting edge of the process excellence industry. Of course, if you missed any of the sessions and want to catch up, don't worry, they're all available on demand. All details are on the BPM Live website, which is www.bpmlive17.com. I'm your host, David Robinson, the managing editor here at IQPC Digital. Our first session today, how Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine replaced paper trails and increased collaboration with no-code BPM, is brought to you by FlowForma and the PEX network. In this session, we will look at how the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine used a no-code BPM tool developed by BPM provider FlowForma to transform their organization, delivering efficiency gains and reducing turnaround times. Before we start, I would just like to remind everyone, this is an interactive platform, so please take part. Please feel free to ask questions at any time in the Q&A chat box. Our speakers for this session are Martin Coleman, IT Systems Architect at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and Robert McGarry, Chief Commercial Officer at FlowForma, and Paul Stone, Solutions Architect at FlowForma. Great to have you all on board, guys. When you're ready, please begin.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Robert speaking, and hello, Martin. Good to talk to you again.
Hello, Robert.
Yeah, it's good to speak to you. Yeah. So we're going to just do this in a question and answer form. So, Martin, we're old hands at this. Anyway, let's kick off. And if you can tell us, Martin, a little bit about Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, what it does, and what you do there.
Sure. I've worked at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine for the last 2.5 years. Initially as the IT Operations Manager, I'm now the IT Systems Architect. LSTM is the oldest school of tropical medicine in the world, but it's also one of the newest higher education institutions in the UK. LSTM was founded in 1898 with a grant from a Liverpool shipping magnate, and from the very beginning was part of the University of Liverpool. But that all changed in 2013 when LSTM was granted HEI status. We've got about 700 staff. We teach postgraduate courses in Liverpool, and we've got research teams working across the world with all the work centred on Africa. More interesting things about where I work is we have our own collection of venomous snakes on site, which is good fun, and the UK's only professional snake milker. We also breed our own mosquitoes here, and I've sat in insectaries and testing new mosquito nets, so it's not your normal IT role here.
Okay. And in terms of using BPM FlowForma, why did you choose FlowForma BPM? What was the rationale behind it?
Okay, well, when we became independent, we had to set everything up from scratch. The whole IT infrastructure was followed a cloud-first approach. So our systems are based on Microsoft Cloud services such as Office 365, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, Azure, that kind of thing. But finding a good BPM solution was quite a difficult piece of the jigsaw to fit, because the integration with SharePoint Online was the issue. So we tried a couple of products before coming across FlowForma. So when we found FlowForma, Paul Stone visited LSTM and hosted a very successful workshop around a real example of an LSTM workflow requirement. So then we purchased it. We had the environment and the first 2 workflows delivered with assistance from a local partner. And then FlowForma sent over a trainer who held a course for 8 people on site.
Okay, and was there something about FlowForma BPM that particularly caught your eye? Was it the no code aspect, or the fact that you can roll it out to non-technical members of staff? Was that a big thing, or was there other criteria?
Well, again, it was a good fit with the infrastructure that we'd already chosen, but also we had a big demand for paper-based processes being reworked, and at the moment the bottleneck was the skills. So the fact that we could involve non-technical people in reworking their own processes was the big attraction.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of getting up to speed, you mentioned some of the engagement process, but how long did it take Liverpool School to get up to speed on actually starting to deliver the workflows?
I think the training was January 2016, and I think we delivered our first workflow in March of that year, so it wasn't very long. And so I was one of the 8 people trained initially, and what we decided was to give everybody a simple process to rework immediately after the training, so to embed the training straight away. And I'd recommend that to anyone who was going down this route. So obviously since then, the speed and quality of our work has steadily improved, and I think we've delivered about 80 workflows now in about 20 months since we implemented it.
Okay.
So apart from the people that were on that initial course, we've trained people up internally. So our 2 most prolific workflow developers were people that we've internally trained as well, which is good.
Right.
And it's led to a lot of collaboration between the different operations teams within LSTM. So probably the department with the most number of workflows, processes to rework are our finance team, and they're pretty much self-sufficient in producing their own workflows. But we meet regularly with them. We offer advice and technical assistance. So it has helped everybody work together more.
Right. Okay.
I think also the success of it has been down to how easy, and actually it's quite an enjoyable tool to use as well, which has made it more popular. So I don't get to spend as much time on it as I used to, which is a shame because it's more fun than what I normally do.
So, if I may digress, what sort of things makes it more fun?
Well, it's a problem-solving tool, really. I mean, I have no development background, but I end up creating things which I don't tend to do in my normal role. So it's just a fun development problem-solving tool. Okay.
And in terms of what you've chose to do with it, one of the things you chose first was the automation of the travel request process. And give us a little bit of a background into what that process is like and what motivated you to automate that particular process.
Right. Yeah. Well, I wanted to show a process, and I picked this one primarily because it's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting process, and it's a tough nut to crack as well. So the background to the requirements is that we send people all over the world, quite often to less developed countries, and for every trip, the school needs each traveller to assess the risk of travelling to that country, get the appropriate level of sign-off, and provide details so we can get in touch with them if we need to send Thunderbird to rescue them if they get in trouble. On the flip side, the simple trips such as the jumping on a plane to Geneva for a conference also needs to be covered. So we need the process to provide robust risk assessments, but it also needs to be acceptable to our academics. For instance, it's not going to take them hours to complete or ask for duplicate or superfluous information. So it's quite a contentious area where all stakeholders want something completely different, and there's lots of compromise. So before we turn this into an electronic workflow, travellers were filling in at least 4 paper forms. There was lots of duplication, and it was quite difficult to identify non-compliance. So if we did need to send Thunderbird 2 out to rescue anybody at 3 AM on a Sunday, then someone would be in the car driving back to the office, searching for the paperwork, etc., etc.
Right.
So it's a good illustration of what I like about FlowForma is the fact that it gives you the ability to react to curveballs. So if all of a sudden you're given something to react to, then FlowForma is a good tool for it. So if I start showing my screen now, hopefully.
And Martin, could you give us a little bit of some of the dimensions around that? How many people make use of the travel request process, and how many travel requests do you process per week, per month? Do you have sort of some?
Well, about 700 members of staff, and of those, probably 200 are regular travellers. So on average, we've probably got about 20 or 30 trips a week going on, and again, a lot of those are to countries that are designated as high risk. Okay. For instance, we've recently sent people to Afghanistan, which is an extreme risk destination, Pakistan, South Sudan. So it's something that is very important to us. Right. Okay. And the other thing I do like about this is the way we've presented it as well. It's easy enough to think about creating a workflow and pointing people to a workflow to do a particular job. But this is our SharePoint homepage. Okay, and we've called the system Travel Assist. And what this is a jumping off point for all kinds of things. There's 5 FlowForma workflows in here. There's lots of other resources that people can get. So it is nicely presented. So for every trip, we give every traveller a simple 3-step process. So they have to create a travel assessment to assess the risk of the travel, then they book their trip, and then they finally provide us with some other information in an itinerary, which is who their local contact is, where they're staying, that kind of thing. So there's quite a few FlowForma workflows in there, but the interesting one is the travel assessment, so we'll quickly demonstrate that one. Right. Okay, so this first page here was the first curveball. So if you can see the tabs at the top of the workflow, what it started out was a tab saying, giving details about the trip, about where you're going, when you're going. Then the travel assessment tab, which was all about risk assessments, which we'll come to later on. And the initial feedback was that departments with good admin resources, they couldn't use their admins to help our academics with filling in these risk assessments. So obviously, the sponsor of the project says that the only person that can fill in a risk assessment is you. Okay, so what we did was we put this page on the front where you can complete it for someone else up to a point. So I could put in the name of a traveller, I could fill in as much as I know on the next 2 tabs, and then when I press submit on that 3rd tab, it will go back to the beginning, send an email to the traveller saying Martin Coleman has prepared you a travel assessment for Pakistan, with a link for them to then go in, review the information, complete it, and submit it themselves. Okay, but for this demonstration, I'm going to do it for me. And we're going to go, where should we go? Let's go to Nigeria. Okay, we're going to go to Abuja. We're going next week. I'm going to go for 3 weeks. So let's say. I'm doing this as quick as I can. I know that watching someone else filling in a form isn't that entertaining. Right, we've done the right thing and we've booked it with the proper travel agents. If I had been before, I've got the option here to attach a previous travel assessment, which again is another good feature for our regular travellers. Let's say I've not been there before. Okay, and at this stage, we've gone off and we've gone onto our travel insurance website to find out what kind of risk Nigeria is. Okay, so the options are extreme, high, moderate, or low. Okay, so if it's a high or extreme risk, then a detailed risk assessment is required. If it's an extreme risk destination, then an extra section comes on where both a line manager and one of our directors has to sign off the trip. Okay, if it's a high risk, then only the line manager has to sign it off. But the second curveball came when we found out that places like Nigeria, although it's a high-risk destination, has certain sections of the country which are extreme. Okay, so we put in this safety net here. So if it turns out it's a high-risk destination, then a new section appears here, which directs you to the government website for that particular country. So it's now asking a question, are you travelling to a red bit of Nigeria? So we'll have a look. And we can see that if we were heading to this section of Nigeria, then yes, it would be to one of the red bits. So if we say we're travelling to a red bit, it upgrades the whole thing back to extreme. Okay. So also on this page, we've got health assessments as well, which again, another nice bit is instead of asking people to search around for health information for Nigeria, we give them country-specific links. So there's a SharePoint list behind this with every country in the world, together with links to the equivalent link on the UK government website and also the Travel Health Pro website for that particular country. So if I clicked on here, yeah, Nigeria's vaccine recommendations. Okay, there they are. Right, so at this stage, once I've done that, I can then go to a travel health provider and confirm that I've got all the proper vaccinations. Okay, I'm not going to submit this page because otherwise I think my boss will have a heart attack that I'm going to Nigeria. So if I show you what this feeds. So once people have completed their forms, then there's a hidden admin section for the travel safety team here, and everybody's travel assessments then gets put into a repository, which means that at the start of every week, we check the following week's trips that are upcoming and check that all the paperwork has been completed. Okay. Is there anything else you want to see, Robert, or is that a good demonstration of a real-world workflow?
No, I think that's a good run around and a user experience of FlowForma. But a couple of questions just about it. In terms of who built that? Did you do that, or did one of your teams, or what was the skill set of the people who built that?
It was mainly built in-house. I think we started off with, it was one of the projects that our local partner started us off with. But things like actually the bits of them that are most interesting, like the links to the UK travel advice sites was all done in-house. And even though it looks quite complicated, it's not. It's all driven by SharePoint lists in the background.
Okay, and you were able to apply the Liverpool Schools look and feel to that sort of jump-off site and all of the forms as well. You were able to do all of that as part of the FlowForma functionality, yeah? That's
right, and we've got different development teams around the school. Again, we enforce that look and feel. So every new workflow will be put before a change board. We'll check that they've complied with all the look and feel requirements that we have for our workflows.
Right, and in terms of how long it took to get that live, was it? I know you did say earlier on, but just to remind me, and is that a typical get live time frame for a FlowForma Flow, or is that a more complicated one?
Like with any, it was only a complicated process because of all the different requirements that stakeholders had. So I mean, you're not restricted by the time it takes to develop the workflow in FlowForma. It's more about getting agreement about how the process works. So whereas before our bottleneck was in the technical development of the workflows, now we can do it as quick as we can get people to draw out processes and design processes properly.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, so thanks very much for the demo. In terms of so you built that with yourselves, and obviously you relied on some of the FlowForma people. So how has FlowForma benefited London and Liverpool School sort of more widely?
Well, again, the sheer speed that we can bring things live is the main benefit, and also like the travel process illustrates, it's down to compliance as well. So it's much easier to nudge people that haven't followed the correct processes now. We get good quality compliance data.
Right.
And we can dip into the admin function and check on quality as well, so quality of people's risk assessments. I suppose from a user perspective, the process is much more efficient. So we have, obviously, I've shown you how academics, admin support can get involved and make things better for them. But also we have travellers who will be arranging their next trip while they're already abroad. So before, when it was a paper-based process, that brought its own complications. But now, from a hotel room in Abuja in Nigeria, they can book their next trip to the Philippines.
Okay, and you mentioned also the fact that you are rolling this out to other departments, so as well as something that's looking after travels. Your finance team are also building their own processes on FlowForma.
Yeah, as I said, they're probably the most prolific producers of processes of workflows at the moment. So again, the guy that's doing the finance ones was internally trained. We meet with him very regularly and we help him out. But the majority of the work is actually done within the department. So again, we're talking about people with no development experience, no skills in that area. But FlowForma is so simple and enjoyable to use that it's really caught on and taken off.
And you said that your team acts as a centralized, internal best practice team. And do you provide much assistance to the finance team in building new processes? And how does that work?
Well, I suppose,
and you, sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, it's more about, because a lot of cases it's about solving problems, isn't it? So it's much easier to solve a problem in a group. So we see them every week, and it'll be they've hit some hurdle, and then we'll help them get over that hurdle. So we've got only one guy here who is pretty much his entire job is FlowForma workflows. So obviously he's the most useful resource that they can use. But you know, it's about getting your heads together and working out the best route through a problem.
Right. Okay. Cool. And my last question then is one about how you found working with the FlowForma team throughout your use of the product.
Oh, well, we must be one of your smaller customers, and we've always had a very good support experience. So I think I've spoken to your CTO a few times, and I feel like we've all helped to maybe improve the products as time goes on. Yeah, so I can't think of many other partners that I'd be doing this for, doing a presentation.
That's a sign in itself. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just going to hand over now to firstly, Martin, thank you very much for sharing your insights of using FlowForma with us and the other people on the webinar. So I'm going to hand across now to Paul, who's going to take us through more of a detailed demonstration.
Hi, thanks, Robert. So I'm just going to talk about what FlowForma is, what it's all about, and I'm going to give a demonstration to show you how it actually works. So first of all, I'd just like to talk about FlowForma, what it is. Basically, it's a toolkit designed for building out solutions that include workflow and data collection and document generation, all in one toolkit. A toolkit that's designed for ease of use. And I'm talking about ease of use not just for the end user, the person completing that business process, but also the person configuring the business process, so that you can configure business processes very easily. You can build out solutions in a very prototype way. Sorry. Is everything okay? Sorry, build out solutions in a prototyping manner. So you can actually draft out solutions in a very short time frame. And I'm talking about doing a workshop during the one day and building out a process the following day and then playing it back to those end users the very day after. So really it's a different way of working, and you can build out processes in a very interactive way, involving end users all the way through, to ensure that at the end of the day the process is built to their satisfaction and adopted by the workflows. It's really important once you build a process to get it adopted by the workforce, and FlowForma really helps to do that. And because of that, we're kind of revolutioning the BPM world, because most BPM tools are quite complex, and FlowForma is really a straightforward system to use. We also include mobile apps out of the box so that you can actually access your forms and so on mobile devices. And so it's really built for today's workforce, who of course are a very mobile workforce. They need to be able to do their work whenever and wherever they can. Now we've won a couple of awards and so on. We've got recognition. We've been around for a while. But I'm going to skip all that and go through to a demonstration of the system. So what I'm going to do is show you something similar to what Martin showed you, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail about how these processes are actually built to show you how easy it is to do. And you can make that judgment, of course, for yourself after this demo. But here we go. So the first process that I'm going to show you today is one called employee onboarding. Now, the employee onboarding process contains a number of steps, and on each step you have to capture in some data. So this is the end user view of that business process. And at the very top here, we see a thing called a step bar. And that shows the end user a nice simple representation of your workflow. Now, as everybody knows, if you've ever been in a workflow workshop, hey, the workflow doesn't look like this. It looks like a big flow chart that somebody scribbled on a whiteboard. Well, from an end user perspective, they may have not been there in that workshop looking at the flow chart. And this step bar gives them a nice simple representation. So they can see right now, hey, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps in my workflow. And I'm right now on the new hard details, the very first step. Now, as the workflow progresses, the step bar changes so that the current step moves on, and the step bar can include or exclude steps based on things called business rules. Now, we'll talk about those in a little while, but essentially the key thing you need to know is this step bar is a simple representation for the user so they can see the workflow as it is right now, and it changes as you move through the workflow, so steps can come and go and so on. Now, for every step in the process, a resource is assigned to that step, and only the assigned resource can go in and complete the work. So I'm assigned to the first step in the workflow here, and I can go in and do this step, this task. And to complete this task, I've got to fill in some details. So the area below this here now is an electronic form, a dynamic electronic form that shows various pieces of information that pertain just to this step here. Because I'm assigned to this step, I can go in and enter those details. Now, I've already entered the information because, just as Martin said, there's nothing more boring than looking at a person filling in the form. So here I've entered my own details. I'm boarding myself. And down here, we'll see all the various different types of data that can be captured. We'll also see that you can put in bars and informational messages inside the form to make the system as easy to use for the end user as possible. And that's really key, because you have to make the end user experience really easy so that the workflow is accepted and adopted by the workforce. Now, the form is actually dynamic. It changes as you enter in data. So I'm just going to put in my department here. I'm going to say it's the IT department. And when I put in that, it displays an additional field where I can enter in my manager name. Now, the key thing about this is that the system basically analyzes all that information as you type it in to record that you've done this task, and then it can take actions based on that. And the actions might be to display some additional information that needs to be captured, or maybe just to display some additional tasks that need to be done based on the data that's being captured. And this information is analyzed all the way through. So at the end of the day, when the workflow is finally completed and you've achieved your business goal, you have a record of all the work that was carried out. And all that detail can be used for reporting and indeed for monitoring. So you can identify, for example, how long the workflow in total took, how long did it take to complete the goal, or how long did each individual step take. So you can identify bottlenecks within your processes where steps are overrunning or taking longer than your estimated duration. So this system allows you to capture all this information, and all the information is stored in a central data store. Now, what is that data store? It's Microsoft SharePoint. So we use Microsoft SharePoint as a content database. Now, what that means is all the content that you capture in the workflow here, all of that is stored inside SharePoint in a central location. And once it's in that central location, you can use that for reporting and for further analysis later on. You can capture lots of different data types. And once you've captured, as I said, all the data in a step, you press submit to move on to the very next step in the workflow. In this case, it's an employee manager review. So I can now look at what was entered by a visual person who might have been, let's say, a person in HR. Now I'm a manager, and now I've assigned myself to be the manager just for demonstration purposes, but normally this step would only be able to be completed by the actual employee manager. And they would go in, view the detail here, some instructions on what to do next, and they would decide to look at these details and accept or reject them. So I'm going to accept them, and down here I have a table where I should enter in some applications that I'm going to grant access to. So the new employee coming in, he's going to need access to, for example, Office 365, and he's going to need access to the finance system, for example. So I can type in the details of the systems that I'm going to require, I can add in new ones and so on, make up a list, that will ultimately go on to the IT department, who will be responsible for setting the person up with those applications. And so we've designed this end-user interface to be as easy to use as possible. And I think you can see from this that it's very straightforward. It's also very presentable. It's easy for the end user to become familiar with what they've got to do. Even if they're brand new into the process and never used it before, you can include these instructions and so on to guide them so that they can go in and enter in those details that they need to do to complete the process. And then at the bottom again, once they've entered all the information, they press submit. Now, just to let you know, all the information as they're keying it can be validated so that you can ensure that it's all correct. You can also push and pull information in and out of the form here and back-end systems like SharePoint or external systems like Dynamics CRM, for example. So you can push and pull information in and out, which improves productivity and also improves the correctness of the data that's being transferred from one place to another. Now, inside the form itself, you can also delegate your work away. So if I don't have time to approve this request, I can pass this on to somebody else. I can also decide to loop the workflow back. Now, why would I want to loop it back? Because maybe I've noticed a mistake. So you can see here, I can kind of see a breadcrumb of the process. This is what the information that was entered in this first step. And hey, you know what? They got the email address wrong. I can pass back that workflow to the person who entered those details and say, hey, you got the email address wrong. Please go in and correct it. So it's got all sorts of ability to loop workflow, branch workflow, and also execute steps in parallel. So when I go to the very next step here, you see that I'm in a thing called a parallel group. And now I can click on any of these tabs. Of course, in reality, all these tabs will be done by different users, but they can go in and enter in information pertinent to their particular function. Okay, so somebody can handle sign off documents, a different person can do IT preparation, a different person can do security access, all at the same time. Now, that's a quick overview of what FlowForma looks like from an end user point of view. Let's look at how this is all configured, because that's really key to FlowForma's success. We've built a tool called the Flow Designer, and with the Flow Designer, you can easily create complete solutions. Now, that's really important because with most workflow tools, you're thinking about, first off, you're thinking about a flow chart, because a flow chart is what you drew on the whiteboard in the work group. But with the Flow Designer tool, you're able to build out that whole solution. So it's not just the steps in the workflow, it's the data and it's the business rules, the communications that go from the workflow, etc. All of that is covered off in this tool here. Now, coincidentally, you know, if you like your visual tools, sure, we have a visual tool that you just click a button and there it is. But you know what? The best way to get this done is to cover it off with Flow Designer. I'm going to show you how easy it is to do here. If I want to add a new step into this workflow, I just click on plus step and type new step and then press save, and the step's automatically added in there at the bottom. I'll drag it up to the location where it should be executing. So I'm going to say this new step is going to be the second step in the process. And I'm going to add in a question. Now the question is a piece of data. So I might want to add in a question called name, for example. And you know what? That name is just going to be a single line of text. I'm going to make it mandatory. It has to be entered, and I'm going to give some help on this. Enter your name. Nice and easy. And down here, I can enter in some other parameters. But hey, we'll just save that. And now it automatically adds that data into the step. I'm going to add another question. And this time, I'm going to change the data type. So I'm going to put in an address. And I'm going to specify a different type of data. And you notice that every time I change the question type, the form here changes. So now look, I can enter in some choice values because I've changed it to a choice. Or I could change it to something a little bit more complicated, like a lookup. I'm going to look up a SharePoint list. And you see down here now, I can pick the list I want to look up, and then I can choose what I want to do with it and which column I want to look up, etc. Now, all of this, you may notice, is done using no code. The whole system, in fact, is built so that you can configure the solution. You don't really need to know a whole lot about the technical side of things. In fact, you really not at all. It's all about understanding the logic within your own process, the data that you need to capture, and hand off to the next person in the workflow. That's the kind of information that you need to know, and then you can go in and build out your solution for FlowForma really quickly. Now, there's lots of different data types, but I've got limited time, so suffice to say that we cover off a great deal of different types of data in our list of question types. And the next thing, and maybe the most important thing in FlowForma, is the ability to execute things called business rules. So I'm going to add in a business rule here that's going to take an action, and I'm going to hide the employee manager approval if the name I just typed in equals to Paul. So we have a business rule called hide and show step, where we have some conditions here, and then we have an action. I'm going to put in one condition very quickly. So I'm going to say, if the new step name equals Paul, oops, no, caps. Then what we're going to do is going to hide that step, employee manager review. So that if I hide it, it means it doesn't need to be done anymore. And that's the way we deal with workflow branching. Again, it's all done using a nice simple configuration. In fact, all of our workflow rules work like that. So if I take another one here, and we have a thing called step assignment, and I can again put in some permissions and then conditions if I want to, and then pick a step and then assign it to a specific person or maybe a group of people like the HR department. And so I can dynamically assign the steps as I move through the workflow so that every time the workflow executes, it's a different set of people doing the work. And also have business rules for integration and business rules for communication. So integration is pushing and pulling information in and out of the form to external systems. And the communications is all about things like sending email messages to notify people that work needs to be done or work has been completed. And I can generate documents, generating Word documents or PDF documents based on the form data. That's quite an interesting part of this system, and the ability to edit and generate documents. And we use a template editor for that. And here it is. In fact, it's Microsoft Word. We allow you to use Microsoft Word to build templates. And what we've done is we've built in a plugin from Microsoft Word that gives you a view of your flow. In this case, it's an incident management flow. And down here, I can see all the questions associated with the record instance step. And inside that, I can click on question details, like the division answer. I want to place that in the document that I'm going to generate. So I'm going to click over here, cursor's in the document, double-click answer, and it inserts that. And now when I use the business rule to generate a document, it will automatically substitute all the values from the form into that document, save it as a docx or PDF, and it will upload it into SharePoint. And once it's in SharePoint, you can then control it through SharePoint. You can use SharePoint's document management features to actually limit the ability to edit that document to only a select number of people, for example. And then, you can ultimately convert it to a PDF when it's been finally approved. So the document generation and document management facilities of the system are very important and very, very useful. Now I'm going to jump into another session now to show you something a bit more complicated. So this stuff is relatively straightforward. Employee onboarding, we provide templates for these simple workflows that where you can get up and running with using a template as your base. You can go and modify it yourself to your own requirements, and then you can get up and running in 5 to 10 days. And that genuinely is 5 to 10 days. And you can literally build out solutions very quickly in FlowForma, especially if you use one of the simple to use templates and deploy them in that kind of time frame into your Office 365 or your SharePoint on-premise environment. So it's really a rapid development and deployment tool that works very well for simple workflows. And you achieve a certain return on investment using those kind of things. So you'll receive a certain return on investment on implementing a CapEx workflow or employee onboarding workflow and so on. It solves a couple of pain points. But I guess a higher return will be dealing with something a bit more complex. We call them dark processes. So they often don't have a lot of visibility or control in the workplace, and they're typically doing these kind of things on spreadsheets. Let me pull one up here. Okay, so this one is a tender process. So what we're doing is we're linking multiple workflows here together, multiple forms. And we have a tender that we've issued out to the marketplace. And that's one form over here, okay? So you see that guy in the background where we have a tender reference. And we have some details of what the tender is all about, what the budget is. And there's the tender document that we issued out to the marketplace. And as the tender responses come back in, we have a child form that records those tender details. So here we have a tender submission. It comes in from the market. And what we've got is we see that it automatically has the tender reference from the original tender details flow. And it's also transferred the actual tender document that was sent out to the supplier. And down here then we can enter in the supplier name. This particular tender is for some cleaning services for our main office building. And Rapid Cleaning Services come back with a great quote. And basically now we can upload the details of that quote. And we can upload many documents that were associated with it. So I can just select a file from my C drive here and then just upload that there into a table. So we'll upload a table of the main response and any supporting documentation, and that basically constitutes a response back in from the supplier. And then at the very end, I can say I agree with this above statement. In other words, I can confirm that I've attached all the documentation received in response. So it's an accurate reflection of what the supplier sent in. And when I press submit, something unusual happens. It actually asks me to re-enter my credentials. And this is a feature of our compliance pack where the system is saying, hey, I want to make absolutely sure that you've made a statement there, that you've agreed that this is an accurate reflection of what the supplier sent in. So I want to be doubly sure that you're the person pressing that submit button. And I'm going to confirm that now. Oh, I've entered the wrong password, excuse me. Because I've got the caps lock on. There you go, live demonstration, so just open. So I'm going to confirm now that I have indeed submitted that information through. And what the system does now is it goes into a assessment step. Now this feature is another advanced feature that we use called collaborative decision making. And what it does is it allows multiple team members to review that submission and make their own individual assessment of the workflow. So on the previous step here, I see this is the submission that was made, and now I can judge it based on a series of criteria. So I'm going to put in, are the references good? Yeah, they're okay. The expertise, well, it's not so great. Presentation was really nice. Credibility, no, I don't know. And price, well, actually the price was excellent. So, hey, fair play to them. And here I can put in a response, nice tender. That's my own personal view. And all the team members in this decision group make their own personal view. For the demonstration, it's just me. But I could have as many team members as I like, and all making their own independent assessment of this tender. And at the end of the day, I can decide, okay, I want to finish the vote now. Oh, excuse me. I didn't press my submit button to submit my vote results. So the next page is not going to look that great because the evaluation results, because I didn't press the submit my vote, don't show you my nice graph. But basically, you can review these results from all the voters, and then you can decide what to do about them. So I can submit them forward then for IT director approval, operations director approval, and so on. So if we look at how that was configured, again, something as complex as this is again very easy to configure. So if I were to jump over to my configuration screen, excuse me. Here we go. This is the configuration of that voting step that we looked at. So there's the step that showed all the detail about the criteria. And as we can see, we have all the criteria entered here, and here are the weighting factors for the different criteria. So you ultimately end up with a score for that particular tender. And remember I mentioned about the decision group, where it's just me in the decision group, where as you can see, and I can include lots of other members in the voting group if I want to. I can set maximum number of votes and so on. So again, all this voting functionality is very easy to configure, and the workflow itself is actually very straightforward. Now, one last thing I would like to show you is our audit log, because that particular form also has an audit log associated with it. So it's using our compliance pack, and the compliance pack detail allows me to see the ultimate audit log behind there. So if I close that out, and let's have a look, let me just do a refresh here. So my tender submission, as I click on that, I can jump up here and view an audit log. And this audit log is a nice, simple, easy to read history of what happened in the workflow to date. And that history is actually stored within the form itself. So it's not within SharePoint, it's actually inside the form. And the idea with this is it's a nice, easy presentation that an external auditor could come into your business and just look at this audit record to find out what's going on. And the whole objective of this is to allow you to comply with regulations. So you can have an external auditor come into your office and look at the audit history. I mean, I see to read the audit history. We also have a feature for automatically documenting the workflow. So he can look at an automatically documented workflow, he can see the audit history and individual examples of the workflow, and he can figure out whether you're actually complying or not. And this has been used very successfully. And it was built originally to allow the system to comply with 21 CFR Part 11, which is an FDA regulation, which is a pretty strict regulation, and it deals with that very well. So let me go back out again. So just one, maybe one final thing that I'll just talk about, if I have a moment of time, I do, is porting. So what we'll do is what we'll do is I just present. Sorry, I just have one more thing I'd like to show. There we go. Just one more presentation, which is our auditability. So, sorry, our reporting. So if I click on our activity monitoring here, I mentioned that we have this inbuilt reporting ability. We can actually report on workflows that are running late. In my demo environment, hey, everything's running late. But there's a couple of ones down there that are running on time. But basically, all these forms are running behind schedule. And what I can do is look into the detail behind those forms, and I can identify particular bottlenecks in the process. And I just think this is very, very important. So I would take onboarding there, for example. We'll see that these particular steps, they tend to be running late. So these are the steps that are holding things up. And I can now analyze exactly, because I have all the information in SharePoint, I can see that these are the forms that are causing the problem. And I can dig into those forms, dig into the detail, and find out if the problem is, let's say, a resourcing problem, or if it's a problem with a definition in the workflow itself. Maybe there's an external actor involved in the process that I wasn't aware of, and they're causing things to be delayed. But I can look into that because I have all the detail here in SharePoint. Okay, so thank you. I'll just move on to the very last slide just to say that if you want to find out more information about FlowForma, you can go to flowforma.com. We also provide a trial of our system where you can just sign up to a 30-day trial, and we'll give you a website that you can play with and try out some of our test forms, just like I've been showing you. And you can also download the app from the Office App Store. If you have any confusion as to how you might want to proceed or find out more about FlowForma, how about emailing info@flowforma.com, and we'll respond to you as quickly as possible. Okay, thank you.
Martin, Robert, Paul, thank you very much. That was really interesting. I guess we have now reached the Q&A part of the webinar. This is, of course, an interactive webinar, so please do ask your questions at any time, and now particularly via the Q&A chat box. Guys, the first question that's come in. What do I need in place for FlowForma to work? Do I need other technology to run it?
Maybe David, if I could take that one. Basically, FlowForma, you will have seen works in a browser. So you're looking at, you're either looking at a desktop browser or a mobile phone browser, for example. And in the background, it runs on top of SharePoint. So you need SharePoint on-premise 2013 or 2016, or preferably Office 365, which in most Office 365 plans it includes SharePoint Online. So that's really the key prerequisite is that you have to have SharePoint, which we use as a content database.
Great, thank you. How long does it take to build, test, and deploy a workflow using FlowForma?
Hi, David. If I take that one again, basically I think it's just, it depends on the complexity of the process, but simple processes can be deployed very quickly in FlowForma. So you're really talking about a 5 to 10 day time frame to actually get something like the onboarding process I was showing you live in your workplace. The longest process that we've ever done for anybody, the most complex one, took 30 days. So 30-day build time. But that was an extremely complex process involving multiple divisions of a company in multiple countries, etc. So 5 to 10 days is much more typical.
Great, thank you. Who would be the best person within my organization to deploy processes using a low-code platform? Would this person need training?
I think we have many companies now who deploy processes in their organizations using what we would call business developers. Now, what is a business developer? Basically, the person within the business, for example, a process owner, who understands the business process very well and understands all the complications, the logic in the sense of the process, and they can go in and build out a process in FlowForma. And because it's no code, they just need training in FlowForma. So in terms of training in FlowForma, they're talking about 2 days is a basic training time. And that will teach you how to build out a complete solution. So the workflow element, the data collection, the business rules, and the whole thing. At the end of the day, it's deployed within SharePoint, so typically you might have an IT resource who would set up your SharePoint environment initially.
Great. Have you included security in the data handling in your tender submission so that the data is reliable and secured?
Yes, that's a good question. The data is captured in that box that I showed you. Let me see if I still have that up on the screen. Oh, I took it away, but let me just create one new form here and I'll explain it a little bit better. Essentially, the data is stored within this box, okay? And this box is actually an application. Oh, sorry, I just realized I'm not showing my screen. Sorry about that. So this box here that you're seeing is an application that is running in your internet browser. All the data is stored within that, and then it's encrypted and sent back into your SharePoint system. So inside the SharePoint system, it's stored in an encrypted format and is not visible, in fact. You have to make it visible. You have to, as an administrator, you've got to decide for it to be visible. So the system is, yes, it's very secure. All the data is captured, as I say, in your browser, then sent securely to your let's say your Office 365 tenant and held securely inside the Office 365 tenant.
Great, thank you. Can we build our own processes?
Oh, you definitely can build your own processes, yes. And we provide you with some templates to help you get started. But many of our customers have a look at the templates, ignore them, and then just go and build their own thing. So you can definitely build your own process. In fact, to be honest, that's what FlowForma is all about, helping people build their own processes without being dependent on IT or indeed on the FlowForma company. You can just go ahead and get going. Yeah.
Wonderful. Can you access forms on mobile?
Yes, we provide a mobile apps for Apple and Android devices. So that's phones and tablets. And you can connect the app on your tablet or, let's say, to the SharePoint site very easily. And then you can automatically start filling in forms. So if you build out a form like I was showing you earlier on, like this, like the onboarding form, or it's a tender submission, and you'll be instantly able to use that on your mobile device. You don't need to do anything as such to do that, other than install the FlowForma app, which you can download from the Android store or the Apple store. So it's very straightforward.
Great stuff. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today's presentation. Any closing remarks? Martin, Robert, Paul?
No, I think that Martin's discussion there on what Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine achieved with FlowForma is not a unique case by any means, and there are many other customers achieving similar results by pushing FlowForma out to the business and having the business build out their own workflows supported by their IT department. So that's just quite a typical scenario for us.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to all of you. Next up, we'll be hearing about social BPM as a means of communication. So do please join us again in half an hour. The links will be in your inbox, or you can find them on the BPM Live website, which is www.bpmlive17.com. As I mentioned at the start, all the sessions from this week are available on the BPM Live website. So thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us again in half an hour.